was on the WebEx, and I've seen all their swag.
Okay.
A guy had a picture hanging behind him. I could tell it was baseball. I said, what is that? He says, well, that's Mookie, headed for first base.
Oh, wow.
The guy admitted he was a Mets fan and a Knicks. I said, well, he said, unfortunately, I'm a Mets fan. I said, well, at least you're not a Knicks fan. He says, well, I'm a Knicks fan too. I'm so sorry. And then one of my guys from returning from the opinion writing class in the spring, I had several of those students re-upped because they wanted to, and so he was still operating from New Orleans and survived. There were some students knew people who had a friend who died of the virus, and so forth. So we got into all that, and I did wear the hat, and one student, I said, okay, how many of you have been down I-71, I-75 through Florence, Kentucky? And I said, really, where were you headed? She said, well, I'm on I-75 right now. I'm from Berea, Kentucky.
Okay.
And I said, Berea, that was my first choice for a college. And you had to be really poor to get in. There was no tuition. You just worked your way through.
Oh, wow.
And my pastor had graduated from there, and he was a role model. I was so sold on the place, but our family didn't have very much money at all, but we weren't poor enough for me to get in. So I had to choose between Oberlin and Ohio Wesleyan. But that was interesting to have that. So we got a lot of connections. Nobody from Michigan.
Ah.
And I didn't ask about, nobody mentioned Clemson. Hey, did you see the AP poll came out?
Sure did.
Clemson number 1, Ohio State number 2. We don't even have a season. We're still number 2. That won't last long, I guess. It's a shame. It's a shame that those two teams can't play each other. And
like 7 times throughout
just go ahead and have the national championship some Saturday.
Yeah. I mean, we're so in the same feed, I had an article about the AP poll, and then I also had an article about Clemson furloughing a lot of their employees. So I automatically texted one of my friends who's down there, and she said, yep, I'm furloughed. And she said, honestly, she used to work at St. John's. She said it's still a much better situation than what St. John's was originally offering. So it's a perspective.
Interesting. Yeah.
So she's still there, and it's going to be just for the fall, but at least she has something, and she owns her own home and everything, so she can survive pretty well. But it's definitely an indication of how things are going. I think some people outside of academia think that a lot of the faculty and staff are keeping their jobs, but they don't realize how many have just not been renewed, or they have not received the classes. We're not going to be using as many adjuncts, I think, this year, and so the trickle down effect is pretty significant.
Yeah. One other thing that was really cool about the class this morning was how the students were jumping in to help each other. I had only one student who couldn't get on WebEx, and that's because he couldn't get on Canvas. He was blocked out of Canvas. I said, well, do you have a padlock? Because I know how to do that. And he didn't. I think it was the guy from New Orleans.
Okay.
And so I sent out several welcome messages starting a week ago, and gave the students a fail-safe. I said, if you can't get on, call my cell phone, and we'll see what's going on. And then if if we have a Zoom-like meltdown of WebEx, you saw that Zoom
Yeah,
down
ironic.
all over the country.
Yeah,
I said, so just in case, if the whole thing goes down, here's the conference call number and you know, login code or whatever it is.
right.
So, you know, if we're just plain down and we can't do it, just everybody call this number and we'll just do it by conference call. And so anyway, so he called in, and the student from, I think it was the student from Berea, who turned out to be my IT department this morning. She told me a couple of things. Taught me a couple of things. Anyway, I held my cell phone up to the mic on the screen, and she was on WebEx telling this guy in New Orleans how to log on to Canvas, and it worked, you know.
That's awesome.
But I did the only technical trouble. That was the only technical trouble the student had. But my screen went blank. I think 3 times,
Really?
and I couldn't figure out why. And so I hit a bunch of buttons, and I ended up on there as 3. I ended up on there 3 times, because whenever I went back on, I was a new person, and so I was getting an echo. And one of the students said, "Well, just mute 2 of yourselves."
Yeah.
And I could mute one of me, but the other thing that happened was the whole screen dropped down, so that for most of the class, I could see the very top of the screen, and the rest of it was halfway down toward the floor somewhere, and I could never figure out how to get it up. But when any student spoke, the picture lit up.
Oh, really?
You know, the speaker voice came up big in the middle. So I've got a couple of technical things to check out regarding WebEx, but the damn thing worked. Amazing. And
Well, it's good, and I think the good approach is to make sure that you give the students all the information that they need. And it's actually a good reminder to me that beyond just giving the Zoom login info, I should also give them the call-in number just in
yeah,
case.
exactly.
But I also have the WebEx as a backup to everything. And actually I'm going to send out a reminder, because what you expect to happen happens, which is the student said, "Oh, I didn't know what the textbook was." Yeah, well, we did send it out. You know,
Right.
I sent it out earlier a couple of times, but she's just not looking in the right spot. And she also said, "I'll see you tomorrow on WebEx." And I'm like, we're not going to be on WebEx, but that's okay.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So I'll reinforce that this afternoon after this call.
Yeah. Well, one of the really nice things that happened as a result of our, doing things this new way, is that I created a page called "Here are the books and subscriptions that you're going to need."
Mm-hmm.
And I found, well, one of the problems is there's a new edition of the textbook, and the only place I could find it for sale, the thing was like $221, and it was out of stock. And this phone system, I couldn't reach the bookstore all day yesterday to find out, do they have the new 7th edition of this book? And I know if they do, it's going to be $200.
Right.
But the 6th edition, which is what I've always used, I mean, you can get one of those for, $15 from someplace. So I told, like you did with yours, I gave them one option. I said, if you can't buy the 7th edition, or you don't want to lay out that kind of money, get a 6th edition. Get a 6th edition. And here's where you can get them for X price. Because there were only 2 places in the world where you could get the new edition of the textbook. Even the publisher didn't have it on its website. and the only place, there was one place that, I don't know what country it was, but it had a currency I didn't recognize a symbol for the currency.
Oh,
So
wow.
it wasn't a euro, or it wasn't a pound, or a Deutsche Mark. I don't know what the hell it was. It just seemed a little shady. But even Amazon, when they deliver the textbook for, bless their heart, only $124. So they knocked off $100. It comes from London, from
Got
their
it.
London office, but they're out of stock.
Mm.
And so the only place that I knew in the world where you could get one is the St. John's bookstore, which I couldn't reach. But the good news of this was when I got down to, well, okay, what can you do about the AP style book?
Mhm.
The AP, and I don't know what, you don't use that. You're APA wherever you teach, I guess. But we
Pretty
use, for news, you got to use a Associated Press. The Associated Press has a 30-day free trial for the brand new online version, which is totally searchable. And like Edit Check or Spell Check, they have AP style check software
Oh,
for
nice.
browser, Word, or one other thing. And so what happens is the students typing, and you can download all this stuff for free. And I did it. There were actually 5 things, and when I went for all 5, I got a fatal error message. So I said, okay, I'm going to start paring it down to what they really need. So I was able to tell them, go to apstylebook.com and click on this and this and this and this, and you're going to get the style book, the style checker.
Hmm.
When you type, something that's not in line with AP style, it flags it. And not only that, it pops the citation out of the style book and says, this is what you should be doing. I
Aha.
said, this is 10 times as useful as they're turning in a paper and my going through it with a red pen saying, bang, 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 bang. You got a paper full of red marks and they're all AP style. They'll learn it before they even, and then here's the best thing, quizzes.
Mm.
90 quizzes you take yourself, and you can keep taking it till you get it all right. $6.95 a year for this, but free for 30 days. And I said, you will be required to take some of these quizzes. So go ahead and get this right now. And all of those things are going to mean that my students, because we have to do this differently, my students are going to know AP style better than they ever have before. And the
Yeah.
first part of the course is all AP style. I mean,
Are you gonna suggest to them that they do the 30-day trial and then abandon it at that point,
no,
or?
no, I'm saying that you can take the 30-day trial, and at the end of 30 days, you can subscribe for a year, for instance, to the quizzes, which they won't want to do. But I can get all those quizzes out of the way in the first 30 days.
Right.
And if I think that we still need that, then I said, I may require you to buy the $7 thing. Also, the New York Times student rate has gone down from $7 a month to $4. It's $1 a week. And I told them exactly how to do that. You go bing, 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 I am a student, bing, and you get it for $1 a week, and they bill you $4 a month.
Right.
And and I'm requiring it. They're not going to say, in the past, somebody's, can I use the New York Daily News? No, everybody's going to, for $1 a week, everybody's going to read the New York Times every day and
Right.
talk about it with, everybody will talk about it with each other every day. So the only thing that went, that the students didn't get, was, with some effort, in my third welcome, I put an addition to the third welcome message.
Mm-hmm.
What do you call it? Not a message, it's announcement. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, honey. My wife. I got my own law. I got a lawyer. I got an in-house lawyer here, which could be good and bad.
Your TA over here.
Yeah. She's my IT. She's my mouthpiece, and she hasn't sued me yet in 22 years, thank God. But anyway, I said, my final thing, I said, some of us may have been touched by COVID,
Right.
and and so I said, we're going to talk about that. And then I asked all of them, tell me what's been the effect. Do you know anybody that's had it? Yeah, my aunt and uncle had it, but they're okay, and that kind of stuff. So I said, in remembrance of the people we've lost or the people who suffered, and I'd already referred up higher in the thing to my love for the Ohio State Marching Band. I said, the day I got a call from St. John's, I was playing music in Michigan, exclamation point. Got a call, can you teach at St. John's? It was a Friday. I said, when? They said Tuesday. And I said, it was a hitchhike and a long Greyhound ride to St. John's. But one of the guys I was performing with was a good friend of mine who made an arrangement of a hymn, one of my favorite hymns. And so here's my late friend's arrangement of one of my favorite hymns played by my favorite musicians. It was the Navy hymn, Ohio State Marching Band. And if you can listen to this and not shed a tear, you're not a human being. And and so Paulette and I worked. I mean, we worked for an hour trying to get it. Would not go into an announcement. It
Oh, in
wouldn't.
the announcement. Oh, okay.
It wouldn't go in an announcement. So I tried everything. I just dropped it into the blank space at the top of the first module, the home page of the module. I just plopped it in there, and I could change the title of it. I said, hymn for COVID lost and suffering. I couldn't change what was in the thing itself. So I sent an additional announcement and said, the last part of announcement 2 is really at the top. You'll find it at the top of your home page. Please look at it. And I couldn't find one student who was able to see that. Well, you couldn't avoid it. I mean, you go to the home page of module 1, and there's the goddamn Ohio State University marching band right there, but they couldn't do it. So that's my big challenge. We got to give them some Ohio State. Did you see when I had a Woody, although I'm the only one here, this is great because I can just bother you. But when I sent you,
Well, that's here too. So
one of those things that I sent for the CDM or something had a Woody. It was a YouTube of people talking about Woody and his 3 bad things can happen when you pass the ball. But did you happen to look at that? Because if you did, you probably didn't. Because if you left, I said, watch counter, and I gave him like, here's 15 seconds of this I want you to watch. But if you'd let it run, here's Woody charging onto the field and punching the Clemson linebacker that ended his career. Right on there. I'm done.
I need to go back to that. I have some cleanup work I have to do in OTE because I still have stuff trickling in from some of our colleagues who decided to take another whack at some of the things they wanted to just improve just for their own purpose. So I'm gonna probably carve out some time today or tomorrow to go back through that, and I'm sure I'll come across that.
Yeah.
Well, let's because we are recording, because I remembered to record. Let's talk about learning activities, and obviously we can tailor it very heavily towards, your course and my course a little bit. But I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to look at some different ways to do things, which I think will be helpful. The reality is that learning activities for many people are very stale. And it's okay to reuse stuff, but at the same time, we have to be very careful not to focus or prioritize the learning activity over the learning objective. So what I did today, and I'll show you kind of my method. So I have this document which I'm working off of, and luckily my department chair has been very nice and said, craft the course the way that you want. What I received was okay, but it didn't have everything that I wanted. And so what I did is I created basically just a written list, kind of like your style, John. So this pad, and what I did is I broke down all the learning objectives, and then underneath the learning objectives, I'm writing down, okay, week 1, this is how I can, provide content and create a learning activity around that particular learning objective. So it's a little bit different approach than what we talked about in OTE, but it's still right there in terms of alignment, So I think I caught myself, what was funny is I caught myself this morning doing this and saying, I'm doing exactly what you're not supposed to do. I am just going week by week and thinking about the learning activities, but I'm not starting with the learning objectives in the same way that I teach. And so it's good to be constantly thinking that way, because it ensures that you do it the right way. So I'm doing it this way just to try it out, just itemizing the learning objectives, and then under each learning objective, not in any particular order, I'm saying, okay, this is an activity that gets the students there. This is an activity, this is a project, this is a presentation, this is an assessment. So here, for instance, the kind of the catch-all, so to speak, might be my B learning objective, describe the importance of global marketing in the 21st century. So under this one learning objective, I can deliver a lot of content and do a lot of different assignments and discussions, because it's kind of, let's talk about marketing for the world, is what it's saying. Mm-hmm. I decided not to go a step further, which was to add learning objectives. I rewrote them a little bit, but I didn't want to step over that line from a departmental perspective, because then that's when the course changes, So I rewrote them just a little bit so that they're proper learning objectives. So it's the same thing that they were trying to say, but I didn't add to it, and I didn't subtract either. What I would think would normally be one of the learning objectives is, students will be able to explain the variety of marketing that exists, simple as that, because none of this really says that. It talks about all these other things related to marketing, but not, what are all the different types of marketing? And that's something that I'm going to cover for the first 2 classes. Go ahead, John.
So I was going to say, so what you had a learning activity that you knew that you wanted to use. It was too good not to use it, and to get the alignment, you did not write a new learning activity, excuse me, but you didn't write a new learning objective in order to accommodate it, but you did make one of your learning objectives a little more general in order to create the space to embrace that. In other words, you had a couple learning activities that you didn't want to toss because they didn't seem to fit, but
there's some,
but not broke.
Right, and unfortunately, what happens a lot of is that you'll have instructors that have a bunch of learning activities that they do all the time, and they're not connected to learning objectives. They're just stuff that they always do. And so, you know, if you go in that direction a couple times, you know, nobody's going to yell foul. You know, nobody's going to call you on it. But if you look at the learning activities, and then you look at the learning objectives, and there seems to be no rhyme or reason, or no connection, no lines between them, then there's a problem.
Yeah.
And I think the part of the process that makes a lot of sense there is to make a note for the following semester to say, this learning activity is very important because it does X, Y, and Z. It doesn't line up with the learning objective as it stands now, but it really probably should be there. And that's where you would maybe go through the process with the department chair to say, you know, I think here's a revision that I would like to consider. It doesn't deviate too much, but, you know, if it's okay, I'd like to add it, kind of thing. Because, and here's the irony. What I was referring to about what was missing, the name of the course is Principles of Marketing, but there's no learning objective that frames principles of marketing. You know, so by the end of this course, students will be able to describe the principles of marketing. Like, that's not in there. So it's just kind of funny. And especially since I'm going to be covering that in the first couple of weeks, you know, tomorrow and next Wednesday and next week. I want to make sure that they understand it pretty well. So let's see. So here you have three modules. One is what is marketing, one is traditional marketing, and the other one is pay-per-click advertising. I'm going to ignore pay-per-click advertising for the moment, but I'm going to jump right over the content and get into the learning activities. You know, if the learning objective, which is right above it, is to differentiate between marketing and advertising, then I'm going to do an activity that gets them there. So I'm going to have them in person, and following some time with them to talk about the different categories of marketing and the different examples and types of marketing. Then I'm going to break them up into groups, and I'm going to have them articulate the differences between marketing and advertising. And so that's a very direct learning activity that goes right to the heart of that learning objective. The nice thing about that is that activity, you can say, okay, so I'm mostly there. The remaining piece is the assessment piece. How do you ensure that they still know or do know what the difference is? But I'll deal with that in the assessment session. So that's the learning activity I'm going to do is group. I'm going to do breakout groups to debate differences between marketing and advertising. And so I'll preload it within Zoom, different groups based on the number of students, because I have 40 students. I'll probably do 10, maybe I'll do 8, make it uneven within each group. Plus I'm probably going to have a couple students that are missing. But that would be 8 groups of 5 ideally. And so then after that, we can come together and we can discuss as a bigger group, okay, what did you guys come up with? Did you come up with a consensus of what the differences are? And then we'll go through it and then we'll break it down. So that's the first one that I would come up with. Differentiate between marketing and advertising. This is something that I can also, they do have a paper, but the paper is primarily based on their knowledge and recognition of what marketing is to them. And you'll see if in week 2 under traditional marketing, I have the same learning objective again. So I think in this particular instance, this is where I will, actually I'm going to use the, yeah, it's going to be A2. A2 is the nomenclature that I use for listing assignments, discussions, etc. So I'm going to call it A2, and I'll have them do 3 brands. I'll just call it 3 brands, but basically it's going to be student will write a paper, on-page paper, identifying marketing and advertising that these 3 brands do. Okay, so quite simply, they're going to take the leap from the learning activity that they did the previous week in terms of the breakout groups. They're going to combine that with some content that I'm going to provide them next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And they're going to be in a position to write a paper so that they can articulate a definition. 3 brands do. They will also, actually, I'm going to do this as a separate thing. I'm going to do this as a discussion. So D2, discussion 2, each student will explain in their words the difference between marketing and advertising. So I'm basically tripling up on this notion. Okay, 3 different learning activities between the first week and the second week that tie in specifically to that learning objective. How does that sound, John?
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. And then the nice thing is this actually doubles the 3 brands paper and the discussion. They both serve to some extent, it's getting me close to an assessment in the sense that it lets me know whether or not they get it. Do they understand the difference between both? And maybe the assessment that's tied into this particular thing, you know, if I wanted to just make myself a note here, and this is, I'll come up with a better way to do this, but that's not the one I was looking for. It's this one, assessment midterm. You know, and I'm just giving myself a little note to say, this is one. So there are 3 learning activities that they participated in, 1 in-class session, 1 discussion, and 1 assignment following those discussions, that discussion group work. And then I'm going to do the more formal assessment during the midterm. There's going to be a question. And so by the end of that, there should be a degree of understanding, and they should be able to differentiate between both. And maybe I go a step further in the final, because here we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 7 learning objectives. That's a pretty decent list. Why not reinforce that throughout the course? And I could see that either being part of the group project or the final project in terms of explaining or characterizing or explaining their marketing plan and differentiating between what they're going to do in terms of marketing and then what they're going to do as part of advertising. Anyway, what I like about this format, honestly, John, is that this is real. I'm really developing this course while we're together, and you're getting it firsthand and live, and then others will be able to watch this video and see how the sausage is made, as they say.
Sure.
Yeah. Do you Do you have a learning objective that you're thinking about that you need a learning activity for?
Well, yeah, immediately, immediately it would be concerning being able to use the Associated Press style book to become familiar with how with Associated Press style, and that would be the learning. That's one of my learning objectives, is to be able to edit. So editing for style is one of the key things that a copy editor does. So the students have to learn that, and the Bible for that, the playbook for that is the Associated Press style book, and the method that I used for in-person involved students handing in a piece of paper with some citations written on it based on the fact that they had flipped through the entire style book to just to see what's in there. It's a gold mine, and you could go your whole life and not realize that it tells how to set up a cooking recipe if you're
Oh,
having
really?
food editor or whatever. There's every conceivable kind of thing in there. So now we're remote. So the learning activity. Okay, here's an Associated Press style book you can get online, but it's just an alphabetical list of stuff. It doesn't. You don't get to explore it. So I went beyond that for learning activity and said, okay, go to Amazon, and Amazon only has not an online version, but an ebook version. And it costs about $5. And right next to that on the Amazon website, you'll see you can download the app, the Kindle app, free. So for $5, you've got a Kindle app, and you can actually flip through the style book. I discussed this learning activity with a fellow journalism professor at another college, and she said she tried using the online style book, and it didn't work because you couldn't say, okay, you didn't have the commonality of the various students because you couldn't name a page number or something like that, but it doesn't give the big picture. So now I give them not only online and a possibility of paper, but an ebook, right? And so that's the learning activity. That's the learning activity for this week, is do that, flip through the style book, but you don't have one. That's how you do it. So that sounds complicated, I guess, but it's simple in a way, but you have to have a different way of getting at it. So I don't know if I answered the question, but
No. It's I get it. So I wrote some notes in the chat. So I'm trying to wrap my head around it as if I was maybe one of the students in the course. So I wrote down, so the learning objective is students will be able to edit for style using the Associated Press style book.
right.
And then I wrote two things. Students will write a paper that reflects different elements from the style book. That's what I heard you say before. And then the second one was they'll go to Amazon, purchase ebook of the style book, and then flip through it. Is it just the process of doing that that's the learning activity, or is it the discovery of what's in there or what's missing or how usable it is or something along those lines?
Well, it's just the purpose of that is to force the student to learn what is in there,
Got it.
the breadth of what is in there. You know that it's okay. It's an alphabetical list, so you know if you look up AT&T, you'll see, here's how we say it. Here's how we write it. Here's the style for it. But it doesn't, but because you weren't thinking of writing a recipe, or you weren't thinking about editing a story about religion, or any one of a 1,000 different things, you don't realize the resource you have in that one book. And
Right.
and once you realize that, you keep that book beside you your whole career. You get a new one every year. Now it's going to be every 2 years, and as changes are made, or your boss says, your copy chief says, we don't, that's the AP, but we don't do it that way here at the New York Times, and you put a note in your style book, right? And so I got all the style books right here that I've had for the last 25 years,
Right.
with notes in them. I'm
So how will you know that they've gone through the book?
okay. So the way they'll post. I'll pose this as a discussion question, and
Okay.
they will reply by in their response, they will list the 5 or 10 citations. They're not going to read it. They're just going to eyeball it. Okay. You couldn't actually read that whole book for a 1 week assignment.
Right.
But as you flip through, you saw things that were noteworthy to you. Oh, here's something that surprised me. Here's something that I thought would be helpful to me. Here's something that puzzles me. I don't understand this. So list the things that you found helpful, puzzling, surprising, or otherwise noteworthy. And they used to do that on a piece of paper and hand it in, and I would, evaluate it. Now they're going to put it on a discussion board, and all the students are going to do that. And so that's how I would know that they've done it. Let's say it's a simple but extremely important step. And
Right.
once they've got through that, then they'll know where this key resource. They'll know that it's going to be even more helpful to them than they imagined. And then when you add these new bells and whistles that they're going to get with these downloads, they'll find out a way to reinforce this by having some robot tell them, wait a minute, here's you need to do it this way. And that's very exciting to me. Paulette will tell you, I was so excited. I didn't know what to I didn't know about that. I never had to go. It was so simple. Here's your book, flip through the book, eyeball it. Okay, write paper. That's learning activity.
Well, I think that you completed it by having that discussion piece, because then it's like, okay, I have it. I flipped through it. Now what do I do with it? And it's a meaningful exercise for them to say, okay, find X amount of things that are either surprising, puzzling, or helpful, and then add those in the discussion, and then comment, oh, I found that too. And I still don't get it, but I think it's good.
Yeah, exactly. Or you might say, I disagree with it. For instance, they changed that just this year. That's what I'm going to say next. But it was a question of sexism. We had to, and you probably read about this because it made the news. It was news when the AP came out with this. There were two things. They said you can use the word they now in the singular. You don't say, let's say you're talking about somebody and it could be either male or female. And the AP always said, whenever you got that situation, always say he or him. And I tell my students, that's the one thing I'm going to tell you in the AP style book, don't do that. That's sexist. You have to say he or she. That's awkward. And then you'll read in the forward of some books, an author will admit, okay, I'm going to say he all the way through here. I'm warning you about that because it's awkward to say he or she. And I'll say, well, and if they put they, which people often use, then I'll mark that. That's a violation. Come on, that's a grammatical problem. You know,
Hmm.
it's plural. That's a plural word. Well, now the AP says it's now also a singular word to refer to, instead of he or she, you say there.
Okay. I was going
Say
to say,
they.
what is the appropriate? So it's not they is, it's they are, and the they is the singular.
No, no. You say well, you use it in place of what used to be a singular he or she, and it sounds wrong
Right.
until everybody gets used to it. The other
But
big,
that's a great learning activity in itself. I
yeah,
think that would be fabulous to see who can come up with the proper use, or once you deliver that news to them that there's something that's already changed in the AP style book. Now it's like, how do we practice that? Because I think that's very relevant right now, and
yeah.
that's great.
The other newsmaker was that it's now black. When you say black, meaning an African American person, the black is capitalized.
Yep.
White is still not capitalized. Black and white both were not capitalized. And Lewis Henry Gates had the best explanation of this whole thing. And he said, well, my grandfather was a Negro, my father was an African American, but I'm a black, you know? And so that's another transition. And then of course the Nazis will say, yeah, well, you're capitalizing black and you're not capitalizing white.
Right.
So the AP has an explanation in the front of the new style book that says, this is why we're capitalizing black and we're not capitalizing white. And that's something that copy editors, journalists, we're already being asked. And so if you notice that black is capitalized almost throughout the whole newspaper industry instantly because the AP said so. I'll shut
Uh,
up. I've
no,
been
no, no.
determined.
What's interesting is I'm 50% on that institution. I'm putting something in the chat. So I have always used the capital B with black. My first dissertation was on racial identity theory. And so I was using the term black all over the place.
Good.
And I'm a member of a historically black fraternity. So
Oh,
it's part of my I'm always writing something about it. But then I've also capitalized white, the W in white, for a very
yeah.
long time, because for me, just logically, I was thinking, and this is going back 20 years, if you capitalize the B in black, then wouldn't you capitalize the W in white? But, I apparently I stand corrected, although it still would
Well,
feel strange to not capitalize the W.
well, no, I mean, let's say we do grant proposals here in this house.
Right.
And we do, when we respond to requests for proposals, the RFP coming out of uh, many, many agencies has capitalized black and white for
Okay.
a long time. And so when Paulette writes these things and I edit them, and so I have to get in my mode. Okay, I'm out of AP mode and I'm in RFP mode. And
Right.
so I make it consistently black capital B, white capital W. But if there's no pattern in the
Right.
RFP, you in style matters. If you're writing an RFP, you take a hint from the way the questions are posed.
Right.
You have to answer this question. You answer it in the same style that it was asked. If the city of New York says capital B, capital W, that's what you do. And now, even though and you said, well, whether you go along with this because you go 50%, you capitalize B, you still wouldn't, or maybe you capitalize both. The AP doesn't rule everything.
Right.
It rules newspapers that adopt its style or mostly adopt its style, you
What
know. But,
what's neat about that is you've actually described something that I think is important in life, and we try to weave in as much of that into our courses as possible. But the idea of pattern recognition. So if you're reading something, an application, an RFP, whatever it is, and you see certain things, you're recognizing patterns that then you use to your, for the next step of whatever that process is. In the same way that if you go into a brand new company, your first week on the job, you're going to notice patterns. You're going to
exactly.
notice how certain things happen, and you obviously you don't always follow suit if it's something negative, but you see, at this time of day, there's always a birthday party, and then so you follow the pattern, or there's a way that you label your sandwich, your lunch in the common fridge. It's pattern recognition, and this changes from place to place, and I'm sure paper to paper.
Yeah. So
Something.
exactly. Well, the thing about the patterns, to take it a step further, if the pattern is broken, then you have an eerie feeling that something isn't quite right. And so one of the questions that comes up with this exercise with this style book is, Professor, why is this important? And the reason is that, in your language, if you break the pattern and you say it one way in this paragraph and another way in that paragraph, or maybe two different ways in the same sentence, or two different, the reader can't quite put here's an example. The reader can't quite put their finger on it, but they have this uncomfortable feeling that maybe you don't know what you're doing. And if they get that feeling, then that undermines trust. And if you don't have trust in what you publish, you've lost your reader. You've lost everything. That's all you got.
Yeah. I think there's a really cool learning activity in there somewhere where you could actually present a document to the students where they have to identify what the pattern is.
Uh-huh.
And it could be just a one-pager single space that you provide, and you're very intentional about something, and they have to find what that is, and look at it from the perspective of, okay, so if this is the style of piece that I'm expected to write if I work for this outlet, this is handed to me by the editor when I start on my first day. They ask me to study it. What are the three things that stick out that I need to keep in mind when I write for this outlet? Maybe, I don't know. I think that's really neat from a pattern perspective.
Yeah.
Now, and I guess the exception would be to say, or maybe it's part of the conversation where you say, most newspapers are going to follow AP, but there are exceptions for whatever reason.
Exactly. And you have to say that. And I had a student who called me. This was like a year or two after graduation, I think. No, I think it might have been a summer internship. And the student called and he said, Professor, I've got a problem here. My copy chief said that we do this such and such a way. And I said, and I'm telling my copy chief, no, that's wrong. Professor Long said, and the AP says, and I said, hold it right there, buddy. A newspaper sets its own style.
Right.
And for instance, the Wall Street Journal never said like instead of such as. We say such as. The New York Times, the people who occupy the gutter over at the New York Times copy desk say like. That's just wrong. And the day that the day our style editor put out a memo saying, okay, we're going to say it's okay for us to say like instead of such as. And I thought, the world has fallen, which is another key thing. And that is that you have to learn, not only do things change from the elegant. We said we write, we at the Wall Street Journal, we want to write elegantly. The New York Times obviously don't give it, they don't care. But in another sense, that because copy editors can be very frustrated in another way because the language itself changes.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to be open-minded to that, and you have to recognize where's the line between the style book has the line between, has this word changed yet? Right? You take the word moot. The word moot used to mean debatable. Now, if you look in the dictionary, the first definition is debatable. The second definition is not debatable. That word is useless. Or in your case, and I don't want to, and here's a chance for you to learn something. Begging the question, you know, well, people often say, well, that begs the question. No, it raises the question. Begging the question is ignoring the question. Begging the question is assuming that something that you haven't resolved is already the case. You've jumped ahead and you've begged that question. You've skipped over that question. You've assumed that question has been solved in the hopes that nobody will notice. So I'm sorry. I'll be quiet now.
No, that's great.
Talk about words.
Yeah, you actually talked to me. You reminded me of something. I don't know what there's a movie recently that came out. It was about journalism, and there was a moment in there where they had a source, and they went to publish it, and for whatever reason, maybe it was the Post. I don't think it was that movie. I think it was more recent. It might have been 2018 or 2019. But they had this junior copywriter who edited something in the quote. And so when it was printed, it was deemed as not real.
Yeah.
And it put them, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was something having to do with a court case. I'll find it. But you reminded me of that because of that role. You know, there's a style that you follow, and you know, there's certain rules that apply to every, you know, publication, which I think is a great lesson. And actually, I'm sure there are a few examples, and this is a great opportunity to tell some war stories. But I'm sure you could rattle off a dozen people easily that you know personally that lost their jobs because they didn't follow, you know, what the style for that particular publication was. But I like the story that you said about the student who called you, and that's a good moment. You know, just because I teach you something doesn't mean that you don't have somebody that you need to follow more. You know, it's kind of.
Well, you know, there's another thing too, and that is there's a thing. This is a thing. You have to get the paper out. I mean, there's a certain time that you have to push the button. This is one of the reasons for a style book. You know, you don't want to have. I've been involved in debates on copy desk where, unfortunately, this was a Sunday section that I was assigned to temporarily, where it didn't matter whether the clock was ticking because you've got until Friday to do this. But you know, and this is it's like, how do we spell cat? You know, and there are all these. That's a ridiculous example, but so that you can get the paper out. One of the good things about a style book is, and there's no debate. You just look it up and you do whatever it says there.
Right.
Right. That's another point. So
Yeah, a lot of good lessons in there, and I think the students will really, you know, and if you put these all together, and it just creates a very rich course, which is good. I have one question, and then we're going to wrap up. I mean, I understand the value of a ebook for the style guide, the AP style guide. But I mean, to me, and maybe, and I'm digital everything, but it almost feels like the following statement might make a lot of sense. You have the option of buying this digitally, but I would recommend at some point in the near future buying a hard copy so that you can write a lot of notes in it, because you will take this with you from from job to job to job, and it's good to have that with you.
Yes,
Something along
good
those lines.
idea. Very good point.
I have my APA guide somewhere, and I do have notes, and I have little Post-its, those little square Post-its pretty much all throughout it, because I figure things out. And I think with the way that you've described the AP style guide, even though I've never seen it before, it seems like something that you would want to hold on to and take with you everywhere, and make it kind of a traditional piece that you bring with you and put on your desk.
Yes, exactly. It's your friend. And I was thinking the APA style book desperately needs a copy editor.
That's ironic.
And I know this because I got called in. The assistant dean at Hofstra, where I'm also in the faculty, called me in. This was a few years ago. And I thought, I'm being fired for something. I wonder what. And he said, well, we've heard that you're a really good copy editor. He said, we're up for the School of Communications up for reaccreditation, and we want you to edit the accreditation application. It's going to be, parts of it are going to be written by every professor in the department, and you've got to go through it and follow the APA. Oh my God, APA, no. What? Okay, follow APA, and also make it sound like it was all written by the same person. And of course, I found out immediately how many of my communication school colleagues didn't know how to spell, or, that was very revealing. But and then the person who was supervising the accreditation liked what I did. And we got, by the way, just to brag, the accreditation people in Nebraska or wherever they come from said this was the cleanest application we've ever received. And so we passed. And the person who supervised it was a wonderful professor who knew how to spell. And she was writing a textbook. And she said, I want you to edit my journalism textbook.
There you go.
We use if it's a book in the social sciences, including journalism, it's not AP, it's APA. And that thing just about drove me nuts because it was full of footnotes. And I said in class the other day, the APA has, I think, I counted them, I think there are 37 different styles for footnotes or endnotes, and they have differentiation like this. If it comes from a newspaper, you use a P or PP, meaning this is a page number.
Right.
But if it's not a newspaper, if it's anything else on the planet, you don't put the P. And my theory was, if you're citing a newspaper, the APA must think, and they are psychologists after all, they must think you're stupid. So, I tell my students, if you can possibly avoid the APA style book, you run as fast as you can the other direction, because it really needs editing. I think it's inconsistent, it's unclear. I don't know how you guys do it. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate that.
Yeah, sure.
All right. I think that's a good place for us to wrap. It's been a great conversation. I hope it was helpful.
Yeah.
And
very much.
I've moved ahead a little bit in terms of my thinking for my learning activities, which is good. And hopefully, I provided some extra pieces for you. And it's recorded, so it's going to be out there for a long time. You and your hat.
That's scary. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John. So you have to call that for me.
Okay. She says hi. She's waiting. Wait. Here.
Yeah.
She is. Never mind. She looks great. See, Dave.
Bye, John.